Watch this.
They are supposed to be part-time legislators, but now they're asking for some overtime. Voters will decide if Idaho's lawmakers can call themselves back into session at any time. But it's not that simple. Kids getting their hands on rainbow fentanyl isn't really a thing here in Idaho, something we learned this week from the state's police. But that has led to some other questions about the deadly drug that is seeing an increase in use and fatalities. Meanwhile, Idaho and Boise are frequent occupiers of top 10 lists. Top spots to live, to raise a family, to enjoy the outdoors, but it seems we're not always the tops in actual joy. All right, a lot of big decisions being made from now until the first Tuesday in November for governor, for attorney general, congressional delegates. But there's a choice on the general election ballot that might be just as big when it comes to laws that will impact your day-to-day life. Do you think the Idaho legislature should be allowed to call themselves back into session? Back in 2021, lawmakers passed a resolution to ask voters that question, to amend the Constitution to give lawmakers the power to call themselves back after they adjourn, usually around March or April. In Idaho, only the governor could do that right now, as is described in the state constitution. So what will it mean to change Idaho's constitution? Here's Joe Paris.
This November, Idahoans have the chance to change the Idaho Constitution. Voters will get to decide if the Idaho legislature should gain the ability to call themselves back into session after yearly adjournment. Right now in Idaho, only the governor has the power to call lawmakers back to Boise to consider limited legislation determined by the governor's office. Assistant House Majority Leader, Republican Representative Jason Monks, supports the idea.
I think it's an important function and privilege that we should be allowed to do. I think it's a privilege that's been given to the courts. It's also been given to the governor's office. They don't really have to ask our permission or any other, one of the three branches of government to be able to do their job.
Monks believes the idea will prevent messy legislative sessions that drag on in the future.
A couple years ago, we never sine died. The House did, and the Senate did. And so we were technically in session the entire year. That we had to do that because it was the only way to make sure that we were able to respond to COVID emergency problems that may have come up. And by allowing us to call ourselves back in will really prevent us from being forced to be a year-round legislature, which really nobody wants.
I think we should stick with what's worked for us for 130 years and leave our Constitution alone.
House Minority Leader, Democrat Alana Rubel, says she hopes Idahoans turn the idea down.
My feeling on this is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We've been working very well for more than 130 years with the current system that we have, where the governor calls us back in when we're needed to come back in. And I'm really concerned about this proposal to have the legislature call itself back in as many times as they want.
Rubel thinks the idea as written also lacks logic.
I am fearful that it would be extensively abused. And I think the threshold isn't high enough. So right now, what they're proposing in the amendment is that 60% of the legislature would have to want to come in. Well, if you think about it, the reason they would be coming back in is probably because the governor does not want to call us back in, because the governor already can call us back in. So presumably they would be doing this because they want to do something that the governor does not want.
If lawmakers did call themselves into session and pass something that the governor did not like, he could veto it. Lawmakers would need a 2/3 veto vote to override that.
So it would seem to make sense that you would want to have at least 67% so that you could override a gubernatorial veto. Because if you're calling yourself back into session to do something that the governor is opposed to, it seems at least to not waste people's money, you should be doing that only when you have enough support to override a governor's veto.
I think it's important for us to be able to work as a legislative body. It's not necessarily about passing legislation. It's just whether or not we can get to discuss issues. We may call ourselves back in and decide, you know what, there's nothing for us to do, or the best course of action is to wait. And that's okay too. But having that conversation, I think, is critical.
And if there's a real emergency, the governor will call us back. I've been called back into plenty of special sessions. We have special sessions, when there's a reasonable cause for one. It's not like we can never have a special session other than when we're regular. It's happened routinely when it's needed, and the governor has called us back when it's needed.
It's our job to legislate, and it's our job to appropriate all the money. And so if there's funding that comes in, emergency funding for something, we need to be there to be able to appropriate that money.
So all Idahoans will get the opportunity to vote on this on their ballot, whether you go on Election Day or you do early voting. But Brian, it's a big question, and it's one of these things when you talk about voter turnout, when you imagine 30% is usually the big voter turnout. Everyone should get a say in this, and everyone should vote on this because it could greatly change the political landscape of our state.
Okay, let's get real for a second,
sure,
Joe, because we all know when these special sessions are called, there's a lot of discussions that we don't know about, that we're not privy to. They already come in with kind of an idea of what they're going to do. They get handed that from the governor, but there's also discussions between the governor and the legislators, several of them, to say, is this a possibility? Can we call people back and get this done? So, I mean, we're kind of already at that 60% of the legislature has to agree to come back kind of thing, aren't we?
Yeah, kind of. And there are lawmakers, though, and not that appear in the story, but there are lawmakers that I've spoken with that basically say, back in 2020 when the COVID situation in Idaho was very serious, they felt it was unfair that the governor's office and the executive branch really unilaterally got to handle all the decisions on their own, including legislative funding and federal funding, because the legislature had already sine-died. So as all this federal money started to come into the state of Idaho in the back half of 2020 and as well as in 2021, there were lawmakers who believed we should be there and we should be working on this type of information, and the governor shouldn't just do this himself. So I guess the logic behind this from some lawmakers is we want to make sure that the governor can't box us out, and if we think we should be at the legislature and 60% of us agree, then we should be able to. It's also a balance of powers thing, according to some lawmakers, saying that the executive branch, they don't need permission from the legislature or the judicial branch to go to work. Same thing from the judicial branch. They don't need the permission from the legislature or the executive branch to hear court cases. So that's the argument that in favor of it. Against it, though, there are lawmakers that say this is a bad idea. There's a lot of things that could come with this that are unintended consequences. But at the end of the day, it's not the lawmakers that get to decide. It's you at home. Yep. So there you go.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. All right. For whatever reason, presidents like to declare war on nouns, like the war on terror and the war on poverty, just to name a few. The wars never really end, though. They're ongoing. President Richard Nixon's war on drugs started in the early 1970s with reinforcements coming from President Reagan back in the 1980s. Back then, the front lines were with the cartels trying to stop cocaine and marijuana crossing our borders. Today, there's a new enemy, or at least a new offensive from the enemy, better known as the opioid crisis, highlighted by a synthetic opioid called fentanyl, which is becoming an increasingly popular drug on the streets. Whether drug dealers are targeting kids with colorful pills, well, that was the focus of our story this week. But that also sparked this email from Paul. Why in all of your reporting on fentanyl are you not including percentages of legal prescription overdose deaths and illegal street drug overdose deaths? It seems to be intentionally skewed to reflect the current quote-unquote war on drugs. I would love to know those numbers, and it might shine a light on prescription drug abuse, which we know is a problem. So it's a good time now to bring in Andrew Bartline, who basically took this question and went out to find an answer. So how does prescription overdose, all those prescription overdoses compared to what we're seeing as recreational overdoses?
Well, it's tough to know specifically because the way the numbers are sort of divided up by the Department of Health and Welfare. That's the folks who track these sort of things. Now, the most complete recent data is from 2021, where more than 5,000 people total visited an emergency department for a drug overdose. Of those 5,000, it was 353 people in total who died from a drug overdose in Idaho. We know that 152 of those deaths were linked directly to fentanyl. In total, Idaho had 89 other opioid overdose deaths. Now, if we want to put those into percentages to make it a little more digestible, fentanyl accounts for 43% of drug overdose deaths in Idaho. Other opioid overdoses, it's a little more than 25%. So 1 in 4 is not a small number. But these other opioid overdose deaths in total, that number doesn't give us any context. How and why are people overdosing? Because we know of those 89 other opioid deaths, prescription drugs are a part of the puzzle.
Prescription drugs is that they are prescriptions, so sometimes there's a misconception that they're safe because a doctor prescribed them to you. They can have a confounding effect where you can get kind of more sleepy on them, which then can in turn lead to these unintentional overdoses, which we do see actually a fair amount, which is why there are a lot of recommendations and restrictions in prescribing these to patients unless truly indicated.
I mean, there were more than 5,000 overdose visits to emergency departments in 2021. I mean, there's 365 days in a year. 5,000 is a lot. So do you see this every day in your work?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we do all the time. We give Narcan, and if we can reverse patients and it was just a light overdose, sometimes we can send them home, sometimes we have to admit them, and sometimes we have to tell their family members that they died. I had a patient just last week, normal person with a family, with a job, that came in and overdosed on their home prescription medications, and I could not get them back despite all of the efforts. So yes, street drugs, fentanyl are a concern, but these prescription drugs are a very big deal as well. And don't forget that they're also a huge offender, and to be very wary.
What do you think maybe could happen or maybe could change? I don't know what Idaho's laws are right now, but that's got to be tough. What can change? What would you like to see change?
I mean, most of our practice in the emergency room, I mean, we're pretty restrictive in giving them out. Like I said, really low quantities and only under certain circumstances. And there are some patients that are mad at us for not giving them more pain medications. I think it's also just reshaping our view of pain as a society. If you fall down and get hurt, you're going to have some pain for a couple days, but taking a narcotic or one of these sedating drugs, it actually doesn't help you get better any faster. It makes you feel high, it makes you feel good, but it actually doesn't go to the area of inflammation and make it get better any faster.
There are people that get prescribed something and intentionally abuse it, but there are also people that maybe just aren't following what they were told to do and then can abuse it by accident. You see both of those.
I mean, that's human nature. I think it's hard. Being in pain is really hard. And, if you're told to take it every 4 hours and you're feeling like you're in so much pain and you need to take it more, well, that's probably the time as a doctor to come back into the emergency room for us to figure out, another creative way to treat your pain instead of just sitting at home taking more. And that's actually what I tell my patients. I say, if you're finding that you're needing to take a lot of these stronger narcotic pain medicines at home, then you probably need to be back in here and we need to talk about what's going on. These prescription medications do have really detrimental effects. They're very addictive, and that they should not be a first-line treatment in treating pain.
So yes, people are abusing prescription drugs and it can kill them, and that is happening here in Idaho. People also aren't careful with their prescriptions. They may take extra pills to manage what they perceive to be excessive pain. Being careless, that too can kill them. Other states have laws only allowing physicians to prescribe an opioid for broken bones or if someone is dying of cancer. Those are kind of the only two reasons. States like Nevada, Dr. Kroll says when she was practicing there. She also says the Idaho Board of Pharmacy does not have those kinds of restrictions here in Idaho. But we've gotten to the point, Brian, where if you go and you get a prescription for opiates, you say, I don't know, you get prescribed Vicodin, let's say. If there is a perceived risk by the physician, or if a family member brings up, we have a concern, when they give you your pills, here you are, Brian, they will also hand you Narcan in case that there is an emergency, you accidentally overdose, or you abuse the drug and overdose. So, they're almost coming hand in hand at times when they feel need be.
That is interesting. All right, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Andrew. Idahoans are always in need of a mechanic, but never in need of the latest fashions. And we're not very happy about it either, apparently. The Gem State and Boise get ranked by so many online marketing companies every week, we decided to see if they check out. So where do you rank our show? We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments and your complaints, or any questions you might have. Connect with us anytime. Text us at the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. And make sure you always include your name and the hashtag the 208. That way, we can share your message at the end of the show. You probably get a lot of this as well, but working in a newsroom, it's not unusual to get a lot of junk email. Not necessarily phishing scams, but public relations professionals fishing for some coverage. And a lot of times it's a new survey or ranking for Idaho or some city within it. Wallet Hub is good at doing this. Idaho is ranked as one of the best places to vacation. Boise ranked as the 4th best state capital, the 6th best place for dating. And all of this is based on dozens of metrics that are really kind of take a long time to explain. But you get the idea. So these emails, they're easy to click delete without even as much as a glance. But there was one we got today that kind of caught my eye as I hovered over the trash bin icon. The headline said, "People in Idaho are one of the unhappiest in the U.S." Well, the market research firm Top Data put this list together based on things like employment, personal relationships, and leisure activities, where apparently we're 47th. Well, that email got me digging out my trash bin to see where else Boise and Idaho rank just this week. Just this week alone, we received no fewer than 10 emails telling us where Boise or Idaho ranks. Like, did you know Idaho has the 9th lowest rate of violent crime compared with all other states? Or that Boise is one of the country's safest cities? Or one of the best in which to drive? But apparently we're driving around in broken cars because we're top 10 when it comes to searches for a mechanic. Engaged with our cars? Sure, but not so much politically. We're one of the worst, and we're also one of the worst for Gen Z, whatever that means. Probably because of our lack of obsession with fashion, maybe. We're 35th out of 50 in that regard. On the flip side, we're top 5 when it comes to fiscal restraint from our governor, but that hasn't helped our overall happiness. Based on things like personal finance, where fewer than 2% in the Boise area make more than a 6-figure income, and our mental or physical health, and our social policies, our people are some of the saddest. But these are just lists put together by random outsiders.
I've heard of the list, yeah.
You've heard those lists? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So we decided to take them to the street.
Is Boise one of the best places to live? It should be. It's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
But sometimes they're not so good.
Oh.
Do you make above or below 6 figures?
Oh, below.
Do you make above or below 6 figures?
Me?
Yes.
Above.
Okay. So you'd be in that 1.9%. Do you make above or below a 6-figure salary?
Above.
Do you make more than 6 figures?
No.
No.
I'm a public defender.
Obsessed with fashion. Are you obsessed with fashion?
I'm obsessed with good bargains.
I definitely don't think we're obsessed with fashion.
So 35th is a good ranking.
Out of 50?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you obsessed with fashion?
I can't say that I am.
Are you obsessed with fashion?
No.
No.
I think I've had this since like college.
Are we the most or the least politically engaged?
Most.
Most. Why do you say that? Based on voter registration and voter turnout, we're like 41st. Yeah.
Surprising, actually.
Would it surprise you to know that we are 41st
In voter turnout?
in overall political engagement?
Wow. Yes, that would surprise me.
Are you politically engaged?
I'd say so.
All right. Where would Idaho rank?
I mean, I don't love Idaho's political views.
But the engagement? Middle of the pack, toward the
middle,
top, bottom?
maybe?
We're about 41st, actually,
Okay.
apparently. How about this one? Are you happy? Idaho is one of the unhappiest states in the union.
According to who? I'm extremely happy.
According to this top agency, that's what they call themselves.
Wow. I think that's a lie.
So these surveys, these rankings,
They're crap. I guarantee you everybody around here is happy.
apparently we are one of the unhappiest states in the union.
Okay. Yeah, I totally believe that.
You would believe that?
Yeah.
Why?
As someone who's like a fairly liberal person who is very like pro workers' rights and pro inclusivity and, you know, a lot of more progressive values, like the politics here suck. And if people don't feel welcome or like their government and their like local municipalities care about the actual things that matter from a day-to-day like well-being standpoint, then like, yeah, people are gonna be unhappy.
I just don't feel like that represents us.
34th.
Yeah, I don't feel like that represents us.
No?
I feel like we're a pretty happy population. Look at how you're smiling, like you're happy.
Yes, I'm talking to you about this
Yeah,
stuff.
We're a happy population. That really surprises me.
So you don't put much weight into these?
No, obviously not. Obviously not.
Just the good ones, apparently. And speaking of the good ones, right about the time we were finishing up with those questions downtown, I had another ranking list hit my email. And in the message line, it said, West Coast residents are the hottest between the sheets this cuffing season. So, of course, I opened it. And apparently, Ashley Madison, the website that directly deals, or strictly deals, I should say, with married people looking to have an affair, put together a list of cities where they see the most action from fall to spring. No pun intended. The cuffing season, by the way, the cold time of the year when people are looking for the warmth of another person. I had to look it up, too. And guess where we found Boise on this list? Smack dab in the top 10, number 7, behind 3 Florida cities and Las Vegas. Oh, and Cincinnati, Ohio is in the top 5, too. This ranking was based on how many signed up with AshleyMadison.com between October 2021 and February 2022. That means the 7th most signups per capita for an extramarital affair website came from Boise, Idaho. The website writing this: Boise, known for being one of the best places to be single, married residents don't want to miss out on enjoying a hot connection during the cooler months. So you can decide if these lists represent us. You know, it's one of the most visited sites in the city of Boise. The old Idaho State Penitentiary operated for more than a century, from 1872 to 1973. So there's a lot of history there, something we talked about several months ago when we retraced its territorial beginnings. Well, over that 101 years, it housed more than 13,000 inmates, 10 of which were executed. All were hanged, and 9 of them were put to death from a wooden scaffold in the yard, the other taking place in that modern maximum security building built in the 50s. Well, since taking over the old pen in 1974, the Idaho State Historical Society has treated it as an historical monument, offering tours. They've also held events for holidays like Valentine's Day and Halloween, which is just around the corner, by the way. And during those times, they've shared the stories of the old pen, including the more than 500 escape attempts. But now the Historical Society wants to hear from you. They want to hear some stories from you. They want to hear from people who may have had a connection to inmates who were housed there, or have some unseen images, some pictures from behind prison walls. And they're hoping any news stories or pictures could help enhance the experience of the tours of the old pen. So if you have some to share, you're asked to schedule an appointment with the Historical Society, their staff, next weekend, October 21st and 22nd. All right, constitutional amendment to allow the legislature to call itself back into session. Well, they got this question saying, please go over how much it costs taxpayers if the legislature calls themselves back. Inform the public just how much these officials get in their pocket for the session. Well, from what I understand, they make less than $20,000 a year. But we also looked at this that said in session, it's about $30,000 a day. That includes security and all that kind of stuff. So it's a chunk of change. We'll see you tomorrow.